Hello and welcome to The Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. With me today, of course, is Peter Lavelle, co-founder of The Gaggle and host of RT's talk show, Crosstalk. Well, today is Christmas Eve, holiest day of the Christian calendar, but we at The Gaggle are always on the job, or always have our eyes focused on the important events of the day. And the important event today is Trump's pardons, which were issued yesterday and which were quite interesting, certainly more interesting than the pardons of the day before. He has now pardoned pretty much everybody who was caught up in the Russiagate hoax. And what was significant about the pardons is that he pardoned Paul Manafort, who had been convicted and sentenced to prison for activities other than anything to do with Russia, collusion with Russia, and it was all to do with taxation
and before he had any association with the Trump campaign.
Right before, but it basically dealt with issues of taxation and issues of giving correct information to banks. So in other words, it was a totally separate and really issue, nothing whatever to do with the ostensible reason why the Mueller special counsel office was set up, which was to investigate the Trump campaign's collusion with Russia. So that was a significant development, as was, of course, the pardon for Roger Stone. I think this is entirely reasonable. This is entirely in accord with every other president. If we recall, George H.W. Bush pardoned everyone involved in Iran-Contra. Bill Clinton pardoned many people who were caught up in Whitewater. And it's fair enough, because since in each of these cases, the president himself was the target of this probe, it was only reasonable that the president then pardons everyone who was just simply caught up as collateral damage as a result. So I think kudos to Trump for doing this. Okay, what's your take, Peter?
Well, I think we were all fully expecting it. I mean, it's not who was pardoned, but who wasn't pardoned, which we're still waiting for. And of course, that is Julian Assange and Edward Snowden. But I think wiping the slate for people that were ensnarled in the Russiagate hoax. You know, I just prior to chatting here, I just went into a random Western media article on the internet. It was the first thing popped up: U.S. News and World Report. Again, I didn't know it was still around. And they're taking it from Reuters. This is how they start. 2 men sentenced to prison as part of the investigation into Russian meddling in the 2016 election. I mean, they can't even say the debunked conspiracy hoax.
Yeah.
You know, it's still, this is what I find really maddening. Okay, this is they're not recognizing what the country went through for 3.5 years. So for Papadopoulos, for Roger Stone and Paul Manafort, fine. And not that I would condone the behavior of Paul Manafort, but he was his life was destroyed for other reasons than his behavior prior to his introduction into the Trump political orbit. Maybe they knew each other before it. I don't know. But for Papadopoulos and for Roger Stone, that's absolutely mandatory and moral. And Papadopoulos is still a young man. Hopefully he can get past this, okay? And Roger Stone, I saw him on one of the Fox. Who was he on with? He was.
I think it was with Tucker Carlson.
Yeah, well, it was with Tucker. Okay, and so it was good to see Roger back in good form. I really liked that vest he was wearing.
Very dapper.
Very dapper. Okay. Now, in some of the other pardons, I'm not so happy about. Pardoning contractors that were involved in the massacre of Iraqi civilians, 2 Republican former House of Representative members, which were dirty. I don't see that, the reasoning for that. But I'm not going to condemn it either. This is a special prerogative and privilege that every president has. What was his name? Seth Rich? Mark Rich, that Clinton pardoned. Okay, I mean, which I thought was kind of odious. Okay, and there were people in his orbit constantly pecking at, pardon him, and then finally he did it to Lavelle. That's fine. That's fine. I don't have a qualm with it. Okay. What's most important is that innocent people have their slate clean, not the guilty in this round. Okay. Not and so I think Trump did a good job. I want him. I beg him to consider other pardons before he leaves office. I think it's imperative for so many reasons, particularly for freedom of speech, for the few people that actually try to practice journalism, and Ed Snowden that really faced down the deep state, and they're liars. People go to prison for lying to Congress, but not everybody, George, not everybody. Okay. And I want that. I really want that, because all these other jokers that through this Russiagate nonsense that lied to Congress, they got book deals, they're on cable TV, they're even teaching at universities. Okay. So again, Papadopoulos, Stone, and I don't know, was Gates involved in that? I don't know if it was.
Gates was never. Well, I don't think he was ever convicted of anything. I may be wrong. I know he cooperated with Mueller, but I'm not sure he was ever. He certainly didn't do any time.
Okay, well, I think he made a deal in the end. Okay,
yeah. I don't remember whether it involved any guilty plea, but that's a good question. I have to look that up, whether there was a guilty plea.
Well, it was the media response, of course, was predictable, particularly with the people that got ensnarled in the hoax. Okay, because they can't let the hoax go. Particularly since a few days ago we did the cyber Pearl Harbor attack. They have to keep pushing that there.
Right. So I think it's what is important. I mean, as you mentioned, the power of the pardon is very important, because the more one looks at the judicial system in the United States, but also in other countries, the more one sees that there has to be restraints on that judicial system. And I think the presidential pardon is a very important part of a restraint, because we see abusive judges. I mean, when we see abusive courts, I mean, we just see it all the time. I mean, not just in the case of Emmett Sullivan, but the judge who presided over the Roger Stone trial. I mean, these are people, judges who are driven by political, ideological, personal animus. And it's wrong. It's absolutely wrong for them to have the last say in everything. And I think it's important that in most countries, chief executives have the power to overturn court decisions, that they have the power to show mercy, that they say, the court got it wrong. The court basically just, it sent the wrong man to death. It convicted someone who hadn't really done anything and sent him to life in prison. And so that power of the mercy, it lies in the hands of the chief executive. It's true in many countries, and I think it's a very important power.
I think that's such a good point, and I would go further than just the judges, but the jurisdictions. Okay, I mean, I think Roger Stone and Paul Manafort and Papadopoulos, they were all in like a 99% Democrat district. Okay, I mean, a jury of your peers. Okay, and that all the more so, Trump absolutely must pardon Julian Assange, because if he comes to the United States, he's basically going to be in front of a jury where everyone is connected to the deep state, okay, and they have their knives out for Julian Assange. You're absolutely right. This is such an important power to have, because more and more often, I hate to say this, is that your politics really can determine, how you're going to be viewed by a court and a judge and a jury, and that is that's such a heartbreaking thing for me to say, because then what's the point of justice? If the stack is, the cards are stacked against you.
Right, exactly. And the judges shouldn't have the last say in it. I mean, we look at the Supreme Court. Do we really think that these 9 people, should have the final say on everything? I don't think it's right. I mean, the founding fathers put the power of amnesty into the Constitution for a reason. They knew what they were doing. They don't want, reckless and abusive judges, which they know that there are plenty of them throughout history. They don't want them to have the last say in everything. There should be a kind of a final show of amnesty or show of mercy from the chief executive. And we see this in other places, like these international criminal courts that have been set up. They're completely unsupervised. They have the last say. They just sent somebody to prison for life, and no one can overturn it. The United Nations Security Council can't do it. None of the European courts can do it. So judicial bodies should not be given the last say in anything. And it should be up to, I think, elected leaders, that the final say, the final decision on what's just should be in the hands of people who are actually ultimately answerable to the public.
Yeah, I mean, if we just look at Roger Stone, the saga that he had to go through, I don't remember exactly his age. He's like 78 or something like that. I mean, he's up there, okay? And when he was on Tucker and they showed the CCTV, here's an elderly man pulled out of his house. He was wearing his boxer shorts and a t-shirt. I mean, really, I mean, this is this ungodly virtue signaling on part of CNN and the FBI, and they had to bring a SWAT team. I mean, did you know that his wife, I think, is deaf? She has a hearing impairment. I mean, he was terrified that they would go around the house and she would find these men with arms, in her house, in her bedroom. I mean, there's no humanity in that. I mean, Roger Stone, what was he going to do? Pull out, a Kalashnikov and then take down the Washington Monument? I mean, what are you guys talking about? And all of the, and people that have committed real crimes, are given concierge service. I mean, it's just unbelievable. That footage is going to stay in the minds of so many people. I mean, Roger Stone is an entertainer. He is a fixer. He's a troublemaker. He's a bomb thrower. That's what he does. Okay. And anyone in Washington, anyone in the media knew exactly who Roger Stone was. You didn't need to bring a SWAT crew to. They could have just called his lawyer and said, could you ask Roger to surrender to the marshal or the police tomorrow morning? And he would have done it.
Particularly, he's charged with perjury. I mean, he's not charged with, drug smuggling, armed robbery. He's not a member of an armed gang. I mean, it's perjury. So there's absolutely no justification whatsoever for sending in armed men, other than it was a way of intimidating him and sending a signal to everyone associated with Trump. Hey, we mean business, and you better start telling us what we want to hear. That is a classic case of judicial abuse. That's exactly the sort of thing one needs to restrain. You can't allow courts to just abuse their powers and
media collusion
in this way.
And media collusion as well. I mean, how in the world could Roger Stone get a fair trial? I mean, after everything that was shown to the public there. I mean, that was intentional. Of course they didn't. And it wasn't about if he had perjured himself under oath. It was, you're in Trump's orbit. You deserve this, okay?
Exactly. That's exactly right. And that's the point about Manafort. Manafort was caught up in it, and the goal was always to get Manafort to sing, to get him to say damaging things about Trump. And when he didn't do it, because there was nothing he could say, there was no collusion. He couldn't, unless he was to lie to them, there was nothing he could say. They essentially punished him for that, punished them again for their failure. Much as we were talking about yesterday with Syria, we failed in Syria, so we're going to punish the Syrians for our failure.
It was like Nikolai Bukharin went during the Stalin trials, and they basically wrote the script for him to, he worked for Polish intelligence, German intelligence, Japanese intelligence, all the intelligence. And you know what he did? I think our viewers should look into it. The great Stephen Cohen, who recently passed, wrote a wonderful biography of Bukharin. What Bukharin did is said, hell with it, I'm going to go even further, okay? And he invented all of these charges against him because he knew he was going to be found guilty, okay? So what he wanted to do is he wanted to throw it right back in their face to show how farcical this whole thing was, because that's exactly what Roger Stone's trial was about. It was a farce, all right? And with Papadopoulos, boozing him up and then flying him all around Europe, and just, he's meeting all these interesting, bizarre people in the course of 10 days. I mean, that was pure serendipity, wasn't it, George? Here, no, he was set up. Okay.
Yeah.
And about his arrest too, he's going through an airport, and then two men come up to him, and forcefully take him to the side. I mean, there was no courtesy and saying, we really need to sit down and chat. Okay. Was he a flight risk? Was he a danger to anyone? He had no idea what was going on.
And as far as I remember, I think his first interview was conducted without an attorney present.
There you go.
Attorney present. which again, the same thing happened with Flynn. They led Flynn, deceived him, that told him that this is just going to be a friendly, sociable chat. And then they use what he said as if, oh, he lied to us, even though they didn't actually think he did lie. But in other words, they misled him because he asked them specifically, should I have my lawyer present? And they said, no, 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 no. It's all, all very informal. So again, total abuse of power.
After all of this here, I mean, do you think how willing do you think people are now when the FBI says I think we should talk? How many people say, "Why? I don't need to talk to you. Why should I talk to you?" Right? You have a long history of deceitful behavior, and as far as I'm concerned, with Roger Stone, that was unlawful incarceration because he was just put there on trumped-up charges.
Absolutely. And then subsequently, if you remember the trial, it turned out that one of the jurors was a political activist, somebody who had actually written messages about Roger Stone. In other words, she had lied during the voir dire about herself and about her interests and her agenda, and she was the foreman of the jury. So, I mean, if ever there was a case of just throwing out the conviction right away, this was it. And
how many people were thrown off the Michael Jackson case? The jurors. I mean, I think there's quite a few. Okay.
Yeah.
But in this case, I mean, in the Michael Jackson case, it was people looking for fame and money. Okay, this ideologically possessed juror, she wanted to inflict political damage. Okay, and any judge worth his or her salt would have just thrown throw it out. Okay, and throw it out with prejudice. Like, don't come back into my courtroom with this circus again.
That's right. That's absolutely. I mean, it is just so disgraceful. And imagine, when in such circumstances, when you find that the fourth person of the jury was, somebody who was determined to find you guilty and had actually lied to the court about herself and about her agenda, and still the judge refuses to throw out the conviction. I mean, that's in other case, absolute outrageous judicial abuse, which has to be restrained. That's why it's important to have the power.
Clapper lied under oath. Okay, and look at what the kind of treatment he got. Okay, there was no perp walk. There was nothing. Okay, and just rewarding him so he could continue to muddle the waters, confuse everyone. Brennan, all of them, intentionally politicizing classified information, which, as far as I know, they're still getting briefings to this day.
Yeah. And the number of times these people lied under oath when they testified before the House Intelligence Committee. Remember, all of those people, there was Samantha Power and all that, this Susan Rice, all of them lied about about Russiagate, about what they knew, and so on. And none of them, there's been no attempt to prosecute any of them. They lied about the whole thing about unmasking Michael Flynn. They lied under oath about it.
George, I was just about to mention that. Look, Roger Stone is a braggart, and he likes to exaggerate his own importance and everything, about Roger Stone and what they did to him. But you remember the time, and it was getting to a major leak a day, maybe 2 a day, from Trump's victory in November 2016 to the time he got into the White House, and the leaking continued. Now, one person that we know of has been held accountable for that, which is felony. That's jail time.
Absolutely. Exactly. We still don't know who was it who leaked that Flynn call with Kislyak.
How many times under Samantha Power's name? There was something like 30 something or
something like that. It's just an extraordinary.
Extraordinary. I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. On the road, lied on the road. Wasn't even before the TV cameras, lying on the road. Susan Rice, lying on the road. And yeah, I mean that's it. So you got again this extraordinary kind of two-tiered justice. Whereby you walk. No one bothers to inquire into you. But you were in the Trump orbit. Suddenly they're throwing the book at you. Whatever and whatever you were doing, what you said in this conversation, that conversation. I mean, it was just outrageous.
Yeah.
As you say, I mean, I think the real question is, these are pardons, I think, are very good. And we're all looking now the Julian Assange. I mean, that's the big one. There are rumors, you keep hearing these rumors on the internet that Trump is considering pardoning, Trump is about to pardon Julian Assange, but none of these rumors has been confirmed. So
Unfortunately, George, in my opinion at least, is that he's thinking about what his next move is going to be, and he's considering if a pardon of Snowden and if Assange would work to his advantage, and if it doesn't, then he probably isn't going to get involved in it. I'm sorry, I'm just being
I agree with you.
pragmatic about it.
I agree, but I think it will. I can't see how it wouldn't be to his advantage, because the people who support him support freedom for Julian Assange. The only people who want him imprisoned for life are his political enemies. So I don't see any downside for him. But I think there may be some fundamental thing in his mind that he thinks that Julian Assange harmed American interest, and as did Edward.
That's what the adults in the room are telling him. No, Julian Assange, let me just say it here on Christmas Eve here. Julian Assange helped save America, helped save people from these maniacal bad actors, okay? That is, I strongly believe that, okay? And I think Trump needs to recognize that. The American people were lied for decades about their foreign policy, and Julian Assange he didn't write it, he just exposed it, okay? He didn't procure it, he was given it, okay? So, the ruling class has been shown to be an entire self-serving group of liars that have a hard time with the truth, and they will mechanize and politicize the judicial system to protect them, not the national interest. So President Trump, if you're listening, that is your reasoning. That's your theory of the case.
No, exactly right. I think Trump should recognize that it is entirely in his interest, in Trump's interest. It's entirely in fulfillment of the agenda that he ran on in 2016 and ran on to a much lesser extent in 2020, that stupid, immoral, illegal wars have to be brought to an end. And that the people who actually support him, the people who are his most devoted followers, believe that. They are strongly opposed to this absolute squandering
and the only way to end them,
blood and treasure on stupid wars. And that's what Julian Assange helped expose.
And the only way to end them is to expose them. Exactly. That's how you do it. That you expose the maniacal and evil thinking behind all of these wars here. We have it all. It's all there to read, okay? And the culpability is obvious. Again, where is the dragnet of indictments, for the people that pursued these wars? And they lied to the American public to pursue these wars. And where is the downside for them?
And exactly, and that's why those very people, those very architects of the Iraq War, the architects of the Libyan War, the architects of the Syrian intervention, they are the ones who are baying for Julian Assange's blood. They are the ones who want him locked away in shackles for the rest of his days. You want to hit them. These are your enemies. These are people who've always been your enemies. You want to hit them. You want to hit them hard, and you want to hurt them. Release Julian Assange.
That would be a nice finale. My goodness, that would be a nice finale. There's still time. There's still time. And we all know Trump likes to create tension, anticipation. He likes to tease. We'll see where it goes here. I just completely aside here. I really, a little bit of Trump 2016 was on display yesterday when he went hog wild against this ridiculous omnibus bill. I mean, it blows your mind. I mean, people disparage us for using the term globalist, but I mean, that is the most globalist document I've seen in a long time. I mean, $600 for your neighbor there. But how many millions of dollars are they spending on democracy promotion in Pakistan and women's studies or all this stuff? Absolutely outrageous. It just proves these people in power don't care about the country. They don't care about the people. They care about pursuing their ideology on the most massive scale possible. I mean, it is ideological possession. These people are possessed.
Yeah, no, that's right. That was a very funny tweet earlier today from Senator Rand Paul. He said something like, "Oh, good. There's in this bill. There's something like 120 million for democracy promotion in Georgia." Yeah, well, we can see what's going on in Georgia right now. Oh, that's Georgia. That's the former Soviet Republic of Georgia. Oops.
Well, I mean, I've told people when the whole thing with Burisma started, I said, you know, if you pour money into these countries, it disappears instantly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Instantly.
Stolen right
Okay.
away. Mind you, a lot of that money then ends up in the pockets of people like Hunter Biden. I mean, a lot of money that went to Ukraine ended up in creeps like Hunter Biden's pocket. You know, no connection whatever to Ukraine. Never even visited Ukraine. But you know, he was a person of influence, so it goes into the pockets of you know, someone like him, who is, to say the least, very well off. Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
They
Well,
always take care of themselves, George. They always take care of themselves.
exactly. All right. Well, today's Christmas Eve. Tomorrow's Christmas Day. So we wish all our supporters a very Merry Christmas. And we will be back because we need to maintain our laser-like focus on everything that's going on. So happy Christmas to everybody. And remember, if you like the gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye.